First, how would you characterize the speeds on 77?
Well, you're well aware of those, so I'd kind of ask you the same question. You think they're excessive?
Well, it's not about us answering the questions. We're here to hear what you have to say. How would you characterize the speeds on 77?
Yeah, I think, well, given that Newburgh Heights has always enforced speed limits on 77, I think the answer is pretty obvious. At times, they can be very, very excessive.
And
Okay.
you've had this program for several years, and it still seems there's a lot of tickets, a lot of speeders out there.
Yeah.
Do you think the program's working?
Well, I think the evidence is pretty clear that based on the number of citations that are issued, speed's a problem. So the answer is yes.
But
Well,
it's
the
not going
question-
down.
I can't control what motorists, deciding to continue to ignore the law. The question I would have for you is, should we just ignore it then?
Here's the question. You've given out tens of thousands of tickets a year for several years. Why isn't that the safest highway spot, the slowest speed in all of Cuyahoga County?
That's a great question for motorists, and I'm looking.
No, that's a question for you. Your
No,
program,
I
you've
answered
told
the
us your
question.
program is about safety and slowing drivers down. If
Why-
it
why are you-
hasn't happened with tens of thousands of these speed camera tickets, why do you keep doing it if it's not slowing people down?
Mr. Gallek, why do you feel it's okay to yell at me?
I'm not yelling at you.
You are.
I'm trying to ask you a question.
You've raised your voice. I haven't raised mine. I'm trying to answer your question.
All right, I'm waiting for the answer.
Okay, but we're not going to keep doing this if you keep yelling at me. Are we clear? Are we in agreement on that?
I'm waiting for your answer.
Okay. My answer is that's a great question for the motorists that continue to excessively ignore the speed limit. Do you know what the citation threshold is issued on 77?
14
I do.
miles over,
It is
right?
14.
But
Yeah.
you still have not answered the question. Why
did.
has your program, with tens of thousands of tickets, not reduced the speed more there?
What would be the threshold that would be acceptable to you to reducing that speed?
You're asking a question. I'm asking you a question.
Yeah.
Why have you not made a difference out there with tens of thousands of these speed camera tickets? If it's that effective, why are we not seeing any difference out there?
Again, I'd ask the question, at what threshold and how do you know that there aren't people that don't slow down now? I see it all the time. You see it when you drive up and down 77. I see the brake lights come on. I see people slowing down. I would ask the question, if people don't want to follow the speed limit, why should we just simply ignore that?
Well, you have a great police department. You have great police officers. Why not use them more other than the speed cameras? Because I just know from my experience driving, if I see a police officer pulling somebody over and you see the lights and siren and they're pulling, you immediately slow down and traffic slows down. But you don't have that. It's not proactive here when you have the speed cameras.
Why should it be that people only slow down when they see a police officer?
That's not the question. The question is, how many traffic stops do your officers make a year?
Many.
Well,
And-
how many
and
is that?
I don't know off
Well,
the
why
top of
not?
my head. Well, you're the investigative reporter. You've done all this research.
I'm
Why
going
don't
to the
you
mayor.
know?
You're the mayor.
Because those aren't statistics that I need to know off of the top of my head. That's why. So my question, to
The
answer
reason I
your
ask-
question,
The reason I ask is, to Peggy's point, how much are you even using your police officers to slow people down? Or are you simply relying totally on that camera?
so the answer to the question is we use a model that involves both. We've elected, which you clearly do not appreciate, we've elected to use modern technology as a tool to do that. Modern technology is being used across the spectrum in all kinds of law enforcement. So our officers we prefer to have our officers moving throughout the neighborhood and throughout the streets doing community policing when we can use this tool as a way to enforce speed limits in other areas. So your question is, well, why aren't they using, police officers pulling people over? Well, there's part of the reason is on 77, we've had a half a dozen cruisers hit in the last 15, 20 years. That's part of the reason. The other part is this allows my police officers to be in the neighborhoods, on the side streets, and in other parts of the community to enforce not just speed, but other forms of protection of the community and the citizens. So my question for you would be, why is that unacceptable for you?
I'm not saying it's unacceptable, but I'm saying in the last, how many years have you had the speed cameras here?
Oh, I don't know. I would say
2016 or 2018?
something like that,
Okay,
yeah.
and it's still, the number of speeders has not reduced. Your number of tickets seems to be consistent, or if not, going up more. So is it working? Is it really providing more safety? Because you're not seeing, like, okay, we've had these speed cameras here and now we see a reduction in crashes, we see a reduction in the number of speeders, but we're not seeing that. So are you looking at maybe doing something different or trying to change it?
Yeah, no, we're not looking at doing something different because our view is that you don't just ignore it. We can't control what the motorists are doing. It's a shame that motorists don't think they have to follow speed limit, but apparently they don't. And it's our job, if we can, to teach the motorists as they go on an individual basis. Hey, you can't speed here. My question would be: you're reciting statistics to me about the number of citations issued. How many folks have gotten a citation that you've talked to that say, you know what, I got a citation, I'm going to slow down?
Here's the question. What specific evidence do you have of people slowing down for this, other than you see brake lights now and then?
Why is it that I have to prove the negative?
Well, you're giving out tens of thousands of tickets. It's your program.
Well, my question would be to the
no,
response.
I'm asking the question.
I'm going to give you.
Evidence do you have?
I'm going to give you
of
an
the
answer.
difference?
If you let me finish, I'll give you an answer. You keep cutting me
You
off.
keep asking more questions.
You keep asking me questions. You're here to ask me questions,
Right.
and I'm giving you a response. You don't like that response. That's not my problem.
You keep
but let me be clear.
Here's the only reason I'm doing it is because you keep starting your answers with asking us a question, and I'm trying to. Peggy and I are both trying to tell you we're not here to answer your questions. We're here to ask you questions as the mayor.
Well, I invited you here, if you recall.
Right.
I invited you here because I have questions for you, because you seem to like to particular cite this issue, this program, as if it's the only program, not just in Cowgill County, but Ohio in general, as if it's a problem. And I really kind of curious as to why you've decided Newburgh Heights is the program that you're going to challenge and question as if somehow their conduct is inappropriate, when there's probably 10 in the county doing the very same thing.
Well, the judge in Garfield Heights Municipal Court said he has an issue with the Newburgh Heights one. He said they also have another community that has tickets there. They don't have the same problem as they have with Newburgh.
Yeah, and look,
And
I
that's
wasn't.
coming from a judge, not
Yeah,
from
I'm very familiar with Judge DiGeronimo. He and we have an amazing relationship. He was here. He swore myself and all the council members in. So we have a good relationship, and I think that's fundamentally going to be the difference that you'll see in the administration of the program now that I'm in office. Prior to 2 years ago, we didn't have the issues we had. Many of the issues revolve around administrations, they revolve around direction, and they revolve around making sure that the vendor is doing their job. There were some technology issues. I wasn't here. The issues that you're reporting on these days are kind of legacy issues of the past 2 years. There was some transition with the vendor's leadership. We have spent a good 60 man-hours in the last several weeks with the court, the vendor and the court together to resolve the issues and the concerns that the judge speaks about. We did that collaboratively. I know that your reporting kind of seems to reflect otherwise. However, we did that collaboratively, where we went and met with the court and said, okay, how do we fix the concerns that are impacting the court? We believe we have a path forward. They're very sensible solutions. I don't know why they weren't instituted previously. I can't speak to that. I wasn't here. But we're excited about the program and making sure the program works the way it's supposed to from the court's needs.
Are you going to stay with Gatso? Is that who
That's not my decision. That's a
Okay.
decision of council.
Okay.
And I don't know. The first step I took from day one is reinstalling the police chief into the administration and operation of this program.
Do you think that was one of the key reasons why we had or you had the issues, or Newburgh had the issues.
Yeah, I didn't have issues. Newburgh
Right.
Heights did.
Yeah, Newburgh Heights.
Yeah, I think that may have been a factor. I mean, you said it when you sat down. Chief Majoy is a professional. He knows this business of police work really well, and he knows how to run programs. So I think that was a factor, sure.
Now, one problem we've seen across the board since this program began, wrong drivers get cited. How does your program help safety when the wrong driver gets a ticket?
Well, that's a pretty sweeping statement. Since the program began, I don't ever recall that being an issue. I do know that recently you've reported on a driver or a couple of drivers that have said they got a ticket that they weren't supposed to get. So how do you solve that problem? If somebody gets a ticket they're not supposed to get, what's the solution?
Why does anybody get a ticket they're not supposed to get? That's the question.
Well, does it happen only because of photo enforcement?
Well, it doesn't happen when an officer pulls a driver over.
You really? So officers don't make mistakes?
Didn't say that.
Oh, you
If I
just
pull
did.
you
You
over-
did just say that.
If you pull a car over, you know who's driving the car because
Yeah.
you're pulling the car over.
So if somebody gets a ticket that they're not supposed to get, what would be the resolution? Is what you're suggesting 100% perfection?
Well, that's
Is
what the public in the justice system does not have this wide path of wiggle room. When
Right.
the public's in the justice system, they expect the justice system to be right.
Yeah.
We're not making this up. I mean, people call us.
Well-
We're not out there calling people like, "Hey, did you get a wrong ticket?" People are emailing.
I understand that,
constantly, yeah.
and here's the thing. What I see you reporting, and you're operating off of information that, and taking for granted that what you're being told is in the full context and fully understood by the motorist. And I know for a fact that sometimes that doesn't occur. Motorists sometimes confuse things. Now let me get back to the point Mr. Gallek made, and that is people getting tickets they're not supposed to get. The justice system, when people get a ticket that somebody they're not supposed to get, whether that's from a photo enforcement unit or from an officer, what does the justice system do? That's what they're there for. They're there for recourse. So in a circumstance where the motorist that you're referring to received a citation they weren't supposed to receive, what occurred? That citation was dismissed, right? Was it an inconvenience? Was it unfortunate? Yes, it was. And that's exactly how it works when a police officer pulls somebody. If you were pulled over and you weren't supposed to be pulled over, and you go to court and you fight it and the judge dismisses it, that's called recourse. That is how our legal system works. It's not about 100% perfection. Do we strive for that? 100%. Yes, we do. Am I going to be naive enough to tell you that there aren't mistakes, there aren't technology issues? Of course not. But the solution is to do exactly what we do. Recourse. Dismiss it. And that's what happens.
What about the mailing, that issue that happened? Now the judge is saying now he wants proof that those.
Yeah, well, that was one of the solutions that we collaboratively worked together. We
All right, well,
said,
he didn't see, he said it was his order.
well, it was his order.
Right, okay.
Look, he's the judge. When it all comes down to it, everything's his order, right? Because he's the one that understands the law from the justice system perspective, as Mr. Gallek has stated. So I think it's a great idea, because one of the things that people often say is, "Oh, I didn't get a ticket." That's in many circumstances, that's the equivalent of the dog ate my homework, or it looked like junk mail to me, so I threw it out. Now, I have no doubt, given the issues that you've reported on and given the conversations that we've had with the court and what I've learned since I've returned to office, that there was a series of mistakes that were made. And in those circumstances, that order to require a certificate of mailing solves that problem. And I think that that's a good thing both for the motorist and, by the way, for the court and for the village of Newburgh Heights. It also allows us and helps us ensure that our vendor is meeting a standard that we expect them to meet and moving us to the point that you're saying is as close as we can get to zero flaws. That's what our goal is.
And on that point, with this camera system taking a picture of a vehicle, ticket goes to the owner of the car, right? The registry, whoever's registered, the car's registered to.
That's right, state law, that's right.
Right, so the question is, what kind of impact on safety is there when somebody gets a ticket weeks later and you don't even know who was driving the car?
Yeah, so the concept is called prima facie. I'm sure that you guys understand that. And that what that means is that what you're doing is holding the person responsible who owns the car. So let's say it's their daughter. They let their daughter go out joyriding. And their daughter is out driving around and joyriding. And they get a ticket. And they get it 7 days, 10 days later. The owner of that car, mom or dad, needs to set the daughter down and say, hey, this is a vehicle that could really hurt somebody. You need to slow down. So did it happen in the instant? No. But it happens.
Well,
and that's the goal. Right.
You're assuming it
I don't have control. No, I'm not assuming anything.
Well, that's
I
what
don't
you
have
said.
I don't have control over the motorists. We have control over the enforcement aspect of this. So what we should do is nothing, and the answer to that, in our opinion, is no.
And I still come back to the original question. What specific evidence do you have of drivers slowing down because of these tickets, other than you just seeing brake lights now and then?
Well, the evidence we have is the number of citations being issued.
That's not evidence of them slowing down.
So we should wait and not issue the citation? I'm confused at the question because you're asking me to prove a negative, and we have no control over what the motorists do. My goal is to try to change the driving patterns. There have been studies, Ed, over and over, and all you got to do is find them, and I can send them to you if you like, that prove photo enforcement works.
Well,
And
what about
the
Newburgh
federal government,
What
is
study's been done in Newburgh Heights?
the federal government.
What study's been done in Newburgh Heights?
I don't have to do a study.
All right, well, that's
just
what I'm
like
asking.
just
So
like
no
Gates
study's
Mills,
been done in Newburgh
just
Heights,
like
right?
we did a speed study when we implemented the program.
Well, what study's been done since
So-
then in Newburgh Heights to show
Well,
the impact on speeds?
Let me ask you this question.
No,
Do
I'm
you-
asking
well, do
you
you-
what
I
study
just
has been
answered.
done.
I just answered the question.
Do you believe the program works?
Yes, I do.
Well,
and here's
what
why.
proof do you have?
Here's my proof is this. The program works because what it does is allow a more global view of safety. The program is not solely about safety for speed. It's about safety in general. And so if people are slowing down and if people are following the law, we had an example last night. We had a guy drive into a telephone pole, speeding down Harvard Avenue, wiped the telephone pole out. Okay? My officers are safer because they're not exposed to traffic on the roads, and they're in the neighborhoods expanding the definition of what you guys believe is safety. Now you keep asking me, what evidence do I have
Correct.
that it's slowing people down?
And you have none.
If I were to do nothing, what would be responsible about that? Let me ask you this question, because you keep asking me and you keep suggesting that somehow this is a Newburgh Heights only issue. How many communities just in this county have photo enforcement and are using it?
Let me ask you this. Why haven't you ever done a study to show how effective or not effective this is?
Well, we know it's effective because
Why do
it's
we know
issuing
that?
tickets.
How do you know that?
Because it's issuing citations.
But it's
Well,
continuing
that's
to
the number of
issue-
citations. That's not the speed.
And
Yeah.
it's continuing to issue the same or more every year. So if it was working, wouldn't you see a reduction eventually?
So I go back to the question. If the number of citations doesn't go down, should we just stop doing it?
What about
Cuyahoga
doing
Heights
something
doesn't
differently?
have it. Are you saying they're not responsible because they don't have
I
it?
didn't suggest that at all. Cuyahoga Heights made a decision they didn't want to get harassed by you guys.
It was us.
if-
It was us?
Well, this seems to be your issue.
If you keep seeing the same number of citations, why not try something different?
You got a suggestion?
I'm asking you as the mayor.
I'm asking you. I don't.
We're not the
this
mayor.
is the tried and true historical mechanism for photo and for speed enforcement, whether it was a police officer doing it years ago or the use of modern technology. My question goes back to, why is it your concern is about the Newburgh Heights program? If it wasn't working, why it doesn't work, why would Gates Mills put a program in place? Why would Willoughby Hills, that your station reported on, put a program in place? Why would Mayfield Village put a program in place? Why would Parma Heights put a program in place? Why would Parma if it didn't work, why would communities use it?
But you can't produce any evidence.
I didn't say we do produce evidence in the tune of thousands of citations per year.
Well,
and
why aren't
we
the
have to
citations
believe
going down because people are slowing down?
we have to believe, and we do believe, that the people that get citations slow down. And unfortunately, there are still many, many folks that choose to ignore that. I can't control the motorist, Ed. I can't.
That's what your program professes to do. Your program, you're telling us that your program is there to slow people down. So why are you telling me that you can't control the motorist? Because your program that you're issuing tens of thousands of tickets with is aimed at slowing people down.
It is, and we believe that the people that receive a citation learn and don't repeat. How many, let me ask you this. You question the program, right? Have you talked to the motorists that have had 5, 6, 7, 8 tickets and asked them why? I'll give you an example. An individual you know well, an Anthony DiTillo. He's got 6 citations. Why haven't you interviewed him about why he thinks he can continue to speed on the roadways?
Well, here's another question about safety. You know, we did a study last year with the highway patrol figures. Accidents had actually gone up in your zone where you're targeting people with the speed cameras. How is that making drivers safer?
So when you talk about speeds and accidents, you're aware of the difference that a 10 mile per hour, 10 miles additional speed makes, right? You're aware of that?
I took it in driving class, yes.
Yeah.
Well, yes.
The question is,
So
why are we seeing more accidents where you're giving people speed camera tickets? That's the question.
Yeah, so when you are going an additional 10 miles an hour, the likelihood of a fatality increases by 5 times. So not only are we just attempting to get people to not speed, just the effort of slowing them down reduces the risk of fatality and the risk of damage. It is exponential. So
But not
I
at
can't
the
speak to why there are more accidents. I think that sounds like a fluke to me. And with that being said, at what speed
let's say you're speeding, say somebody's speeding 15 miles an hour, 20 miles an hour, very fast. You guys aren't out there stopping them. So they're going into Fleet and into Cleveland, and maybe there's a crash. Yeah. They're not going to get that ticket from you for 2 weeks, but there could be somebody that's killed because they're not stopped.
That's true. And I don't know why that's solely Newburgh Heights' responsibility.
No, I'm talking about
because
your program.
you brought up Cuyahoga Heights, you brought up Independence or Cuyahoga Heights. But
Cleveland.
what about the 8 other jurisdictions they traveled through that didn't stop? They can't. There's just not enough police officers. So modern technology helps with that. Never mind. Speed enforcement's that kind of pursuit is just dangerous. Because when you get to those numbers, what occurs is that motorist is likely to run. That motorist is likely to run because they're looking at an impound and probably an arrest, which creates a greater risk in a lot of ways of high-speed chases. And we've seen it. The village of Newburgh Heights is getting sued at the moment by a car that was being chased from another jurisdiction that wrecked in Newburgh Heights. But somehow we're getting sued because of a high-speed chase. So that's part of the rationale, actually, for photo enforcement, is reducing the risk of these high-speed chases.
All right, and I apologize, but we're going to have to leave. It's almost 11.
Okay,
So
we'll get the last. I know you wanted one more question. I had one more question about finances for the village. What would Newburgh Heights do without the millions of dollars from those speed camera tickets?
Newburgh Heights would operate and have to operate in a way that tried to provide the services that it always has provided in a way that would be dramatically restricted. You know the answer to that question. It's been answered to you a dozen times in 10 years. I would ask you, when is the last time you asked that question to the mayor of Gates Mills, the mayor of Mayfield Village, the mayor of Parma, or any other community that uses photo enforcement? Why is it a question you only ask the mayor of Newburgh Heights?
We're talking to the mayor of
Right.
Newburgh Heights.
And I'm asking you, why haven't you had this conversation with any other entity that uses photo
We're
enforcement?
talking to the mayor of Newburgh Heights, so I'm asking about Newburgh Heights.
I just gave you my answer, but I appreciate your guys' time.
All right. One quick question since I have you here. On Peninsula, are those, I remember the last time we talked to you, I think, or we got the email, you weren't using them for like a month or so because you were, are they back up because,
Yeah, so
Okay.
I'm here in my capacity as the mayor of Newburgh
Okay.
Heights, and because I'm sitting in a Newburgh Heights office, I don't feel comfortable
Okay,
answering
fair
questions
enough.
about my personal business.
okay, fair enough,
Yeah.
fair enough.
So, but I appreciate
I'll email
it.
you on that one. so-
Yeah,
okay.
and that's fine.
Okay.
That's fine. And best of luck to you guys.
All right,
Thanks.
thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks
All right,
for
great.
talking to
Thanks
us.
for
I
making time for us.
appreciate
Appreciate it. Thank you.
it. Sorry
Appreciate
to
it,
cut
too.
it short. It's like, you know how those days are.